get it going. Good catch. Thank you.
Yep, that's okay. We missed a little bit. We're talking about the Facilities and Security Subcommittee discussion of functions and duties. We already approved the minutes.
Perfect.
All right. So any other things that I should look at as I tweak these? And I'll definitely try to get it out to everybody more than, 24 hours before. But I'll tweak it. I'll give it out, and then I'll let someone else, let the three of you run with it, and I'll make edits next time, and then we can be done with it.
Linda has her hand up.
I think the only other question I would have to consider for this at this point is if it would be worth it to put some clearer points about like coordinating with towns or something like that, because of how many the capital projects, what follows under our purview, if we ever are to do another build another building, that would require a lot more town interaction than the other subcommittees. So that might be worthwhile to highlight, or at least consider highlighting.
That brings up a question of mine that I've been meaning to ask. Is there any documentation or policies available to read regarding the relationship when it comes to buildings between the district and the towns in which they are? Is there anything that I could reference? I've been curious about that.
It's mainly the
regional agreement.
Okay.
Which is actually up for a discussion right now.
Yeah.
When's that hearing? It's April.
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure.
April 8th, I'm pretty sure.
8?
Yeah, I think it's 8.
Nice.
Okay.
Thursday.
Okay. Yeah, so that is something that's definitely coming up. It's a dry read, but it's actually pretty interesting to see what it allows the district to do, what it doesn't, who's responsible for what. And it explains why you can't necessarily transport across district lines for certain reasons. And but yeah, that's what I would recommend you turn to. As far as policies, I don't think there's anything else beyond the agreement.
All right, thank you.
Yep. All right, any other comments, questions, concerns? Nope. All right, let me save this, and I will make another edit and try to get that out soon. And feel free to go in and make other edits, and we can all kind of come together and go from there. All right. Next item, update on HVAC repairs. So actually, before we do that, we do have, I think, 5 minutes left, Daryl. Is there anything that you want to hit before you have to jump out?
I just want to thank this group for just continuing to meet through this entire process. It has been, something that none of us were expecting in terms of dealing with the building issues that we've been dealing with. So thank you for that. I do want to just, let you know what we're looking at doing. We're making sure the kids are coming back in on the 5th. We have had really good conversations with our teachers union around the safety associated with the classrooms, air circulation, CO2. It's great. They're now asking questions like, hey, so our air conditioning units, can we have them blowing in? Do we have to change the louvers? Can they? So they're right with it. Bob and I had a great walkthrough with Bill the other day over at the high school. So we're already, elementary, middle, we're really good. We just got about 240 desks and I think about 120 chairs from Spencer East Brookfield. They actually let us use them for the rest of the year. So that was super helpful. Dan and some guys from the high school, custodians, went and they picked them all up yesterday, distributed them to 4 different schools throughout the district. we're feeling really good about where we're at right now. I can, Binex testing's ready to roll. All the nurses are ready to do that. We had a good conversation with the teachers union about that right before this. So I feel like we're ready. Transportation, right now it's 90-10 in terms of the number of kids coming back. So the percentages, 10% of the district, K-8 students are still going to remain remote for the remainder of the year, and 90% are going to come back. So those are the numbers. So out of the 4,500 K-8 students that we have, so we're really excited. I think the teachers are really excited. It's kind of like the first day of school all over again. It's the third time for us. We had our first day, and then the past one in January. Now this, so we're really excited about it. Bob's done a great job, kind of leading the head custodians through the whole training process of ensuring that they understand how to use all these very nuanced instruments throughout the building and use them correctly. And that has been just such a benefit for all of us. So teachers feel really comfortable right now. I feel like I had a second town hall. No, I've actually had 3 town halls with teachers, but I had another town hall with them last week on Thursday afternoon for all the K-8 teachers, and they could ask me whatever questions they wanted to ask about reopening and so forth. And we had some great questions, great responses, I think, from our entire side. We're really feeling like we're in a good place. You're on mute, Bob.
Yeah, Daryl, when's your next meeting with the 9 through 12 teachers?
Oh,
It's in April.
I think it's like April 8th or 8th. I think it's April 8th, if that's a Thursday. Yeah, so we're going to be meeting with them. I'll do another town hall for the high school teachers. And, again, they can pretty much ask us, anything they want. And that's something we're going to continue next year, like the town hall. It's just a nice way for the teachers to kind of get FaceTime with me, however they want to do it. And I said, I walk around the schools and I might see a teacher, but it's like I give a first grader a high five and the teacher's off teaching a lesson. I don't really have the opportunity to spend a lot of time talking with them. So, and they don't have a lot of time spending, having the opportunity to ask us questions about things. So we're really, really excited about where we're going right now.
Good. Yeah, and I just had my Simco meeting at Mayo, and they were talking about students coming back from both homeschool and private school, like starting on the 5th. Like they heard like, okay, I'm pulling my kid from, whatever private school, and they'll be back.
Adam, you're exactly right. So I can tell you, we are having, Brendan, the numbers, this was like 2 weeks ago. We already have 22 homeschool students that are coming back. And that was 2 or 3 weeks ago. I know those numbers have gone up. And we don't necessarily, like, the way the kids come in for, when they're coming back in from private, we don't see them at central office. It doesn't go through us. They just go right to the school. So that's why we don't see the numbers. So there's no triangle for us. They go right to the school and they just, hey, I'm back. I'm re-registering. And, we can check through Power School at our level when we pull the whole, all the numbers, but they don't necessarily come through Brendan or our office at all for registration. Our K numbers are looking pretty good for next year already. We're seeing some really high numbers from some places. Yeah, it's.
I heard they were more okay. They were good size.
They are good size. And what's interesting is, what I'm interested in. I don't know how many, and I talked with Brendan about this, but if families decided to keep their kids out for the year, so because you don't have to send your kids in for kindergarten if you don't want to. So whether or not families kept their kids out, didn't register, didn't do anything, and then they want to send them back in, well. Do they want to send them back in as a kindergarten student? Do they want to send them back in as a first grader? How is that going to play out and roll out? So it is going to be an interesting fall in terms of how that plays out. It's at 7 o'clock. I got to run. I'm sorry. I just
no, that's fine.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and I will hopefully, maybe this one will get out a little earlier. We'll see.
Good luck.
Thanks for coming. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. Bye. All right. So I'll go back to update on HVAC repairs. Does that sound good, Bob?
Adam, do you mind if I ask? I don't know, Bob, if you can answer. I just had 2 quick questions.
Go for it.
that, just to follow up on that, if you don't mind.
No, no. Okay.
So the Binax is ready. Do we have any update on when the pool testing might come around?
So pool testing is a different thing. We are doing a study to see how it might work at Wachusett. It's great if it's paid for and it's free, but it's quite substantial if it's not. So, for instance, we've contacted Algonquin, where they've been using it for a while, Algonquin Regional, and it's upwards of, Brendan told me today, around 60,000 a week. So if you want to put it in terms of people, that's one new teacher every single week that we'd be spending on this testing. So if the state's going to pick up the tab, that's one thing. And it looks like they will for a couple weeks here at the end of the year. We're hoping that they would extend it to the physical end of the year. It looks like right now, if we were going to get on board in like mid-April or after April break, we would be able to get through May, but maybe not through June. So we're hoping that it could get extended for a few more weeks there. We have to see how it would work out here. The difference between pool testing and the Binax testing, Binax would be if I had symptoms at school and they take my temperature with the infrared gun and they see like, yeah, Bob's got a fever. Let's give him a test now, send him home. They can get the results and either prove I have it or don't have it, right away, that type of thing. Pool testing would be where either a bunch of kids or all the kids would be taking a test once a week, every few days, and we'd be having to send all those off to get tested. It's transporting them off to a location. Generally, you have somebody on site that manages it, like a person, and that's another challenge for us here at Wachusett, but it doesn't mean we couldn't do it. Some other schools have a few more resources than we do, so they can kind of squeeze these extra duties in a little easier, and they have access to additional funds. Believe it or not, we're pretty frugal out here and things are pretty tight. So for us to be looking at 60, 70, and at Wachusett, we have more kids than Algonquin. So it would be over 60 grand a week we'd be putting towards this. That's significant. And we'd have to figure out, well, what's the offset? Where do we liberate that money from, So.
Right. No, I appreciate that. Because it is a big undertaking. I mean, it is, of course, something that I think would be important, but it wasn't given the importance at a higher level than our district, so it ties our hands. So thank you for that update.
Yep. We're looking.
I don't know what my other question is, so we'll pass on that.
Okay. All right. Well, we absolutely are looking into it. We're looking at the feasibility of how it could work here.
Mike, did you have a follow-up to that?
Yes, I was curious if that were to be put in place, what the administration has looked into as far as I don't know how it works with parents either agreeing to allow their kids to be tested or not allowing. I didn't know if you could explain what's been done as far as that goes on both the teacher side and the student side.
So from a school district where it's been in place for a while, the way it was explained to us was it's a parent's choice. They absolutely have that choice. And for older kids, like in the high school, it's the student's choice once they're over 16, that type of thing. Typically what happens is two of the, one or two would be sent home with a kid, and you give it, like on a Monday, you send one home and say, please do this, and send it back to school on Tuesday. In the classroom is like little plastic bins. You drop them in, and then they're brought down to Cambridge for the testing results, right that afternoon. That's how it's sort of set up and done. If a parent refuses or doesn't want that to happen, there's no forcing of hands or any of that stuff. So, but it's testing as many kids as we can and seeing what's up, and then reacting to the results once we get them. Binax, the way that works is if I present symptoms, we react at that time. And then once I'm in the nurse's office, we do a test. And unless there's a note from the parent that says we absolutely do not want this to occur, then we would not do it. We just send the kid home.
All right. I've used the Binax. It's pretty fast and easy.
It really is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Linda? Go ahead.
I promise it's super fast.
Super.
just that all the Binax tests, they have to be followed up with a PCR afterwards, right? Because the Binax gives some false results, unfortunately. high count, especially if a child is 12 and under, I think it's
Yeah.
particularly faulty. But do they have to be followed up with a PCR, or is that still to the discretion of the parent? It's not like
The parent can still refuse to have additional testing. Same thing right now. If somebody's at school and like if I was at school and they proved I had a fever and maybe I'm coughing or something and they send me home, the thing is we'd like you to have Bob tested, but my parents might say, "Nah, we're not on board with that. We don't want that to happen," and that's what it is. We would then say Bob can't come back to school until a certain amount of time is expired, or he's symptom free for at least 24 hours. That's how we kind of work those things. It's no different from the way we work it now. It's just if you can get some concrete results, either no, he just has allergies, he can come back then, that type of thing, versus not knowing if I really have it or not. And then, gee, Bob sat next to Adam, and so we're sending Adam home for a week, that type of thing. So if you have concrete results, you can focus in and be more and not have to impact as many people as well.
Thanks. Carolyn, welcome. You timed it right. Came in right as Daryl left. That's perfect.
That was her.
We'll tell him that was the reason. You heard he had that meeting at 7. So. All right. So HVAC repairs. You've got listed on here the Sterling Cafeteria, Davis Hill Central Office. You want to do it one by one?
Sure. Yeah, I can go through here and we can ask questions there. Maybe I'll stop and wait. So at Sterling, we had a situation where the vents a few weeks back, when we had that really cold weather, were stuck open, and and cold air came down. It froze the coils in the cafeteria that are above all the exhaust fans and everything, and we had some ruptured lines up there as a result. So we've been able to partly repair. The louvers have been repaired, so now they close. The heat, we had to open doors and bring it from other areas. We've got the coils ordered, and we'll put them up there once they arrive. So at this point, there's no heat that's coming in there, but with the cafeteria and the ovens and all that, actually the heat during the day, really, they haven't even noticed it. And it's been warmer now as well. So I just wanted to update you on, because that's a pretty significant thing, because in Sterling, it feeds both schools, this single location where they cook. It's actually in the kitchen part is where this happened. That's the plan there. That's where we're at there. That's one of the major big things that we're doing. Any questions around Sterling at all?
I think our HVAC expert had one, Mike.
Yeah, having experience with frozen coils, that's a big deal. Two questions. One is, was there significant water damage in the room? And what?
There was a lot of water leakage, but there wasn't a lot of water damage. It happened over a prep table, so it wasn't over the electronics. Some of it did because it went across some ceiling tiles and came down the face of the ovens. We let them sit for a while that day, and we were able to turn things on, so there was no damage to the electronics. But it looked way worse than what it ended up being. A few tiles had luckily gotten so wet they caved in, and the water came out of there, which was onto a prep table and down into the floor. Some of it was absorbed by a drain, but a lot of it drained out to where we had the cafeteria area. So it was a lot of water spread out pretty wide. They figured it had broken early in the morning, maybe like 3 or 4, and by the time the CAF people were in around 6, it was there. So it was only a few hours, and so we were kind of lucky it didn't happen, several hours earlier. But yep.
And how many coils? One or several?
It was 2 separate ones, and on the ends where they return, the curves on the end is where they split open.
Yep.
I think they brazed or tried to braze 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it was like 4. Maybe of them, yeah. But
so they have low temperature safety switches, also known as a freestat.
I don't know if I can answer that. I don't know enough details on that. It was an alarm when we came in, whatever.
There are devices that are hooked up to coils, which opens the hot water valve if it gets below 40, say 40 degrees or whatever it trips at, which prevents this type of issue from happening. Just for your general knowledge.
Thank you.
You learn something every day.
Davis Hill, I'll move on to Davis Hill.
Sure.
There was a problem in the vestibule with the heating and ventilation unit that was there. That's been completely replaced. There were a few of the univents that had problems, and it was a result of the motors. So we replaced motors there. It took us several days. They saw us in the building. That's why I wanted to bring it to your attention, because if you're on a school council or maybe someone had reached out, you're like, they've been in the building all week. You know, it was several things that we ended up repairing that sort of happened just about the same time. So, and all those have been replaced. We're good to go there. In the central office is a more long-term project, and we're about, I would say, maybe 3/4 of the way through it. So in the downstairs is where the business department is, and the heating and ventilation there system provided heat, but it didn't run when it didn't need heat. So there was no air being pushed through there. We've now resolved that. We've opened up old ductwork. We've put in some controllers that are in there. We've had to move where it was trying to pull air for the return was behind some file cabinets and a desk. So we've moved that to an open area now. We had to cut through some of the cinder block walls there. So that's been all completed. We did all that either off hours or on a Saturday when people weren't in there, because cement dust can be pretty abusive if you've got people in there, and a lot of hammering and that sort of thing. It's now running. It's warmer in there than it's been in a long time. The other thing that we have there is the other side of that wall is where the large open area is downstairs. It's what we call the curriculum center, and sometimes they hold large meetings. We've had to, because of some extra students coming into our ABA program, we've had to move our physical therapy room downstairs there. So we had to get some airflow in there as well. That, I've been told, hasn't been turned on or worked in several decades. So that's now up and running and working. The issue is that we don't have it set up with a controller yet. So we manually turn it on an hour before school, and we turn it off an hour after school gets out. So that will be finished. That's like in the remaining 25% of what they have to do, which is a little substantial in there. So I just wanted to update you. Those are some big improvements to that old building, the ECC building there. There's been several one-offs that have happened about the district. We've did some work in Thomas Prince. Some of that was for getting an existing Univent up and running. In the meantime, we had issues with another one. We were able to move the classroom from where the Univent's having problems to the one we just fixed, and now we're back to the one that isn't. So there's no one in that one room. The good news is for March, when we did all of our air changes per hour measurements across the entire district, there was only one room, and it was that Thomas Prince room, that wasn't at least 4 air changes per hour. And that's quite significant. That's hundreds of rooms, and they just completed all that work, the head custodians, recently. So that's really good news. We have new, they're like fancy bubblers. They fill water bottles. They're touchless, going into many of our schools. We're projecting that the end of April is when we'd be finished having those installed. We have an outside plumber coming in to do that work for us. And the bathroom dividers, our projected end date for those in all of our schools is April 4th. So right before we reopen. And we've got a pretty heavy schedule. The person's working weekends to try to finish that up before we open schools up for real. The good part about that is now kids can use essentially all the stalls, all the sinks that are available in a school. So rather than us where it is now, some of them are bagged and there's a X-shaped tape across it. Now that's they can come in and use them all. So that's some pretty good news. That's a lot of work in a short amount of time. So I didn't know if you had any questions about anything or. Linda?
You sure it's okay? I feel like I always jump right in. Two questions. I just missed when the bottle filler fountains.
April 30th is our projected
April.
end date
Okay.
for that. That's a partly funded through a state grant and partly funded with local money. So
Oh.
that's sort of a half and half sort of thing.
And then I don't know if this is appropriate for a public meeting, so disregard if so. But there were those series of positives in central office that were going like several months back or last month. Could that be tied back to that ventilation work, or just don't even go there? I'm just wondering if there was that sizable amount of work. It just seems like it would be. It seems like the kind of thing where you would put 2 and 2 together. But if that's not
Linda,
true, then
what we've committed ourselves to is making sure that our buildings can be as safe as possible and not to be held back because it might cost a little bit of money. And maybe I'll answer your question this way. We fronted local money, and now I'm writing the ESSER 2 grant, and in that I'm using $150,000 to pay back the district for work we've already done. So that's the attitude we've taken here is, look, let's just get it done. We'll figure out the funding and ultimately where it's going to come from eventually. I'm very much committed to finding grants and writing things to kind of cover the cost of these. So that's the way we're approaching things. We're doing the best we can with the people we have in place that can sort of manage this and figure this stuff out. So I feel we're in a really good place right now, and I'm kind of proud of the work that's been done this year by the Wachusett district. It's quite substantial if you saw the whole list of it.
it absolutely is substantial, and I hope that didn't come across as a criticism, because I didn't mean it that way whatsoever. This is a huge undertaking. It was more of just kind of like a lesson learned of ventilation matters. That was more of what I was going for, of just wondering if that's one of those episodes.
Yeah.
Because it is a lot of work. I mean, what you're saying about the curriculum center and everything, that I mean, I've been in there enough, not much, but I've been in there enough. That is a heavy lift. So this is good work by the district.
And maybe that's one of the positive things that's come out of this COVID. It forced our hand and said, hey, do you value your people? Are you going to step up and get these things fixed? Well, you better do it pretty quick if you want them back in the building. And I think that was probably a good thing that came out of this. I wouldn't want to go through it again. It was a lot of work internally, but that was actually a pretty good thing. And I think people are feeling better about being in rooms. They can hear the things running. The air is coming through. I think it's just been a good overall for everybody. That was a good thing that came out of this.
Good. Mike, I see you have your hand up.
I forgot half of what I was going to say, but one thing is with the improved ventilation is it'll definitely be more comfortable with the added air movement as we get to the warmer temps. That'll be great. What I was going to ask was there will be some sort of reimbursement through grants in COVID stimulus relief, whatever you want to call it, for some of this HVAC work, right?
Yep. One of the good things they've done on the state side with the first ESSER grant, ESSER, and they're calling that now ESSER 1, they would not let us spend it on HVAC systems. They would not. They would only let us spend it if we were going to upgrade them from what they were to like higher filtration or something. They wouldn't let us get any reimbursement for work we had to do to get the things running. So on ESSER 2, they get enough feedback from the superintendents that they've opened that up, and now we're allowed to use that. That's an allowable cost, and I fully expected in ESSER 3, that's the next thing that'll be coming. They'll allow us to do that as well. So, Yep.
Thank you again for all the work in progress that's been made.
It's a lot of people involved, and yes, I thank them a lot, and I'll make sure to let them know you guys thank them. So, yep, thank you.
Since I have you as an audience, Bob, I did get some feedback from a couple Mayo teachers.
Yeah.
All the actual ventilation seems to be working really well. there was a couple of concerns with a few rooms on temperature control.
Yep.
And I'm sure you're probably aware of it.
Yep.
And yeah, some of the comments were, yeah, it's always been out of whack. This didn't fix it, and we didn't fully expect it to. We were going for, air filtration and ventilation.
Yeah, and Adam, I bet, and Michael might be able to give us a little more details on this. If I'm going to crank the fan up in this univent and push more
Right.
air through, if it's off a little, it's pushing a lot more hot air out into the room. So over time, it's going to accumulate and seem like this room's absolutely unacceptable. What we've been doing is backtracking and starting to adjust thermostats. Our problem was we had such a workload. It was just get the darn thing running. And go to the next, get that one running. Now that we've got the things running correctly, we can go back and do the things like, okay, we're going to adjust the thermostat to make sure it's correctly measuring in here and those types of things. In some cases, with some of our older ones that are still pneumatic, they're air controlled, there's been leaking lines, and we've had to put things in. And in one case, the compressor at the head end wasn't putting out enough, so we had to get a new one there. And so it's been something that had been ignored for a while. We're finding there's a variety of problems, but we're committed to working and circling back and getting things done. And I think from the teacher's point, what we're trying to do that's, I think, maybe a little different, we're trying to be more proactive with our communications, especially with the principals. We'll be in Thursday. We expect it to take this long. We were there last night and we fixed this, rather than just in and out and no one knows what was done. And hey, that thing's on today, So we're being a little more proactive with our communications.
Yeah, that's good. That's key. The other issue I heard, and it's related, but I think it's more of a building issue.
Sure.
I guess there's one room, and I don't know if you've heard about it, but basically it seems like there's a lack of insulation. It's a wall that's on an outside stairwell, and basically when they write on the whiteboard, it freezes, and they have to get warm water to clean it off. Only super cold days in the winter, but that's cold.
I didn't hear that, so we will certainly circle back on that.
And I was hearing it, and they're like, yeah, there's this one room that's really cold, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And she's like, and then when she said, yeah, when I use the marker, it freezes onto the whiteboard. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's cold.
That is.
It's not like it's a little uncomfortable.
That doesn't seem possible. I'm trying to think of that in my head. That has to be really cold for that to happen. No?
Oh, yes,
crazy cold.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
So then it's probably just a ghost. I'm sorry. That was inappropriate.
No, that's funny. I like that.
What we've been telling people, everybody, Adam and everyone else, if you have any problems, we've been telling this to teachers repeatedly, you have to go to your teacher first. Your principal first. Yeah. And that's the way we've been trying to filter communications. We can't have, because there was just way too much that wasn't repaired, and we were getting way too much emails. And it's like, I can't make sense of this. Right. Go to the principal. Then we contact the principal. They let us know, yes, room 12 and room 5 next time you're over. And that's how we've been able to sort of get through this and have it make sense and not miss people. And the same thing with PPE and all that stuff. Look, if you need another box of masks or something, don't email me. Tell your principal, and your principal will say, look, for my school, I need 12 more of these to get through the end. And then we get that out that way. So that's what I'd be telling people even if they came to me directly, go through your principal.
Oh, yeah.
All my stuff through them. Yeah. Because there was a lot that needed to happen in a short amount of time, and it got a little crazy for a while.
Yeah, no, and I know Principal Garden was aware of it, but she's drowned with building issues right now, trying to fit kids in that are coming back in a few days. So I was like, I have a meeting on Thursday, I'll bring it up.
Sure. And I will certainly circle back. I got it written down here. And I'm glad you brought the thing about setting up classrooms and that. That's the big job of principals right now. I've finished going through all the schools with the principals. We've toured rooms. I've given them some marching orders on here's how you're going to set it up, do this. That table has to go. Tell them I said it, because sometimes teachers are like, well, that's the table I do this on. But we have to maximize space. And in some cases, it's finding the room for that last desk or two. I can fit 20 in, but I got to get to 23. Well, you got to lose that table in the back of the room, and you're going to put 2 desks there, and one other desk will sit up here in the front, and then the teacher's space has to be just over here. That's what we're having to make some tougher decisions. And so I don't mind going through and giving that message, because I leave and they can be mad at me. It doesn't matter. And so I've been telling the principals, even in the high school, I'm like, nope, this can't happen. Get 4 more chairs in here. We got to take over that part of that, location, the gym and those things. It's just a crazy time right now. It just is.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Thanks. Mike,
Sure.
did you have another question?
Yes, Bob did a good job of explaining the air movement. And anytime you get your hands into any system in a building that hasn't had a lot of work done in a long time, things are going to happen. With the superintendent mentioned getting desks from another district. I was curious as to why we need more desks, why we don't have enough.
Cafeteria. So
Oh,
here's the big issue right now. Those big, long cafeteria tables that fold up, and they're great during normal times. Well, right now they take up a heck of a lot of space. We can only fit kids on one side. So there's the problem right away. So now you got all that distance before the next kids can sit down. Lengthwise, we can probably fit 3 kids along one side, one kid sitting on the crack right there in the table. And in most cases, the seat's off to the side, but you got to have them, like, how are we going to fit the kid in there? So in some cases, we can only fit 2 kids on the side of this 10-foot long table. We wouldn't be able to get enough kids in the cafeteria. So they're using desks in many cases in the cafeteria, and we can space those exactly 6 feet apart in all directions. You can fit a few more kids in there. Same thing when we take over the gymnasiums. We've been putting desks in there to try to have kids eat in there as well. In the terms of the high school, there's kids that are sitting in not only the cafeteria, but there's a couple extra rooms. There's an exercise room, a dance room. We're taking those over. We might be taking over part of the gymnasium just to get the lunches through. We might be up above in the high school. There's like a balcony area. We might be putting kids up there. And before in the high school, you get into the cafeterias, like right next to the auditorium, we're putting desks out there for kids to sit, that it's like a spillover for the cafeteria to get all the kids through. The round tables don't work. We've had to put those off to the side. So suddenly, we're short in the classroom. And we called around, and actually we didn't go down, but New Bedford stood up and said they could lend us some desks, and Spencer East Brookfield did as well.
yeah. Now that you explain that, I do recall seeing pictures of the what was it, the cafeteria with the desks. I just hadn't thought of that right off the bat.
Yeah, that's what's killing us right now. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So, I guess there's a good transition into the basically reopening for full in-person learning. You have some discussion points, but I guess, to continue this discussion, is there any other items like that we're looking at that are significant? I know we're looking at, related to the lunches and stuff, needing to get some basically lunch monitors, because you have eating in 3 different rooms, could be on multiple floors.
Yep. And I'm sure you guys could understand, as you double the population, you're going to have those days where there's an incident. One kid pushes another, or this or that. Safety of kids. There could be we're doing this, or there was a fire where the microwave was, someone's popcorn caught on or something, and we got to evacuate the building, and then the principal has to follow up with that. We can't have a principal and the AP locked into having 90 minutes to start the day, and then they're in lunch duty until the last hour of the day when they surface again, and they got to eat at some point, and they got to get their principal stuff done.
Yeah.
Lunch monitors, that's what everybody was saying. I got to get a break from lunch. I can't do that 5 days a week, because something's going to come up and I won't be able to manage it the way I need to. So that's why we started to look into lunch monitors. I am writing partial reimbursement for lunch monitors into this ESSER 2 grant that I'm doing right now. So we'll get a little bit of relief there. So that's a good thing.
Good. Yeah, no, for that, it definitely makes sense to have lunch monitors. I mean, I know talking to Maya, they're having kids in 3 different rooms.
They are.
Yeah, even if you have your principal and vice principal, there's still an empty room.
Yep.
And when you're opening a school, you don't want to have both administrators tied up all day.
You don't. You absolutely don't.
Lunches now, or
yep.
More lunches, or however you're running it. So
yep.
I thought that was a good idea, and it definitely shows a little foresight. So.
And that was from the principals. That came from the principals. They were the ones that saying, this is what I need. Because after we went through and we'd measure, like, all right, so we understand the desks and how to put it up and where they're going to sit. What else do you need? And that came from the principals. We need these bodies. So that's to their credit.
Mike, I think you were next.
I'm thinking, can you go to Linda, please?
Sure.
There we go.
That's like the best moment ever. No, I'm joking.
Oh,
I'm known for being impatient. So on the cafeteria setup, I guess what first came to mind was about what if there is an evacuation that needs to happen. Is that I assume that's part of the plan and how the desks are lined up for spillover from cafeteria.
Yep.
And then I was wondering about when you talked about the CO2 monitors and the other things that custodians have been trained on.
Yep.
Is that, I think I recall from the hybrid transition that they could be used like by request.
Yep.
I think was the setup. So when we move into full, is there any plan to just kind of do like a regular check? Because it's just there's going to be more bodies over a longer period of time in the rooms, and so just having that assurance might be helpful, for parents sending their kids in,
Sure.
and just everybody in the building, right? So I was wondering if there is a plan to just kind of do rolling checks or random ones or something like that.
Yep, we absolutely have a plan. And so what we've deemed is more important is to make sure that there's enough airflow. If you've got enough air coming in from outside, the CO2 levels are going to be low. We're not burning stuff in the classroom that's creating extra CO2. The rooms were all rated with that APC study that was done earlier, that if you had this airflow, you could sit this many kids in. And in many cases, the number of kids that could sit in there were in the 30s. And that's not what we're looking to do. So we'll be under that. So what we're going to do and what we're planning to do and have already put into action is we are measuring airflow every single month on every single univent or ceiling ventilation system in any room where kids are going to be. So we're doing that every single month. We've already got March done. They're getting ready. They'll gear up for April. We did it in February. Those were our initial readings that we had in play. That's where we measured the volumes of the room, the height, the length, the width, all that stuff, and we were able to get the air changes per hour. Now I've calculated for all the rooms what the minimum airflow needs to be in order to have 4 air changes per hour. So now they'll go around and measure with the flow meters, and as long as they have a value that's above that minimum, that room is meeting at least 4 air changes per hour. The principals have been trained in how to use the CO2 meters, and we've practiced in several rooms already, and they've got numbers. And anybody that asked for it, they've measured their room and shown the teacher what the value is. That's a little bit longer. They have to be in the room for a longer period of time. That wasn't something you'd put in a custodian's hand because they've got other duties to do. So we're going to tie it in to anybody that wants to have their room measured. The principal will come in, hang out for 10, 12 minutes or so, let the meter slowly adjust and show, measure what the quantity is in there. They might tie it in with some of their observations that they have to do as part of the evaluation system. I said, this is a good thing. You bring the meter in, as long as it's turned on, you set it there, you do your evaluation, you look at it, write it down as part of the evaluation, show the teacher like what the value is. So we'll be tying it in. We'll at least get every room one time to just make sure that there are no issues anywhere. I've explained to them how CO2 is heavier than air and it tends to sit down a little bit lower, those types of things. So they've got all that in their head, and that's how we're going to handle the CO2 part of it.
That's great. And that actually ties into my other question.
Sure.
With this increased communication for the repairs and whatnot, are you finding that that's opening up other avenues of communications that doesn't have to do with buildings? And maybe that's outside of our sub, but I was just kind of wondering if it seems like an avenue to kind of really mine as much out of it as you can get, just like you're saying, with the principals can do the evaluations at the same time as the CO2. Are you finding other opportunities for things like that?
I'll say this anecdotally, I think it is helping a little bit. We were in Houghton, and we were in there for some other issues. And because we're in there, I said, well, can you look over here? There's these weird wires that come out of this thing, and I never know what they're for. And am I going to get shocked or something? So they were old video cables from some other system that was in there. So we're able to get the tech guys to come in and cap that off and sort of work in that direction. So that's just one example. I would think right now, everyone's just focused on reopening. And I think long term, if you asked me in May, I might have a much more detailed answer. But right now, everyone is so focused on that it's just, that's what's front and center. And it's not really about additional, hey, let's talk about this, or could you tell me more about that, or put this, show me how that's working, or what the plan is to measure that. It's just about getting the kids in and getting back to the way we used to do school a little bit more.
Mike, you had your hand. Back to you.
Thank you. I've thought and thought. I was wondering, I know it's not absolutely necessary. I was just curious if if you guys use, for facilities type issues, do you use a work order system, or is it all email?
We do for technology. Facilities used to have something, and I don't know why, but they moved away from it. So now it's a little bit chaotic because there isn't a system like that in place. So I think long term, whoever comes in as that facilities manager, that could be one of the things that you guys might ask, or internally we would ask, is you got to get something in play. It's really helped our technology department. It comes in, there's a ticket, there's a record of it. They put down what they've done. That anyone that's involved with that, the principal or the requester, the originator, can see it. They can see when they were in there, or when we plan to be back. We ordered a part, should be in on Thursday. We'll circle back on Friday morning, that type of thing. So you're absolutely right.
I think that'd be a good in the long run, a small investment just for the software for that. So in the cafeteria, is there assigned seating? Is it assigned in both the classrooms and the cafeteria, or not?
So to leverage contact tracing, there's assigned seating. It works in different ways. So maybe I can't say definitely for the high school, but I'll say this. In some of the elementary schools I've been in, there's actually kids' names written on little stickers that are on the desk. Other places, desks all are numbered. This is like A12, that's C13, those types of things. The high school, every single desk has its own unique number that's there. I don't know for sure at the high school if kids are assigned there, or if they're asked to record the number where they sat each day. I'm not quite sure exactly what the high school is, but each building, we've challenged them, Daryl and myself have challenged them, you have to come up with a way to contact trace. And that includes sitting on the buses as well. So the bus seats now are all numbered. In some cases, the principals are assigning kids to seats. In other cases, they're going to come on that first week of school, once we're back to full in person, and record where the kid's sitting. Bob's sitting in seat, C13 or A13 or whatever it is, that type of thing. So we are definitely having assigned seats in classrooms. Kids are going to have to sit there. Teachers need to have up-to-date seating charts. If something changes, new kids come in or someone leaves or something, we have to have those things. We rely on that heavily, especially for contact tracing.
Okay, that's great to hear.
Yep.
Are there glass partitions at lunch, are those being utilized?
We've put plexiglass up where kids need to funnel a little closer together and where cafeteria workers maybe need to exist across multiple lunches. So we've tried to protect the cafeteria workers and also to limit what kids have access to with their hands, those types of things. So if you were to go into the school that maybe you know a little bit, you'd see there's a lot of plexiglass up, and we've got it hanging from the ceiling and screwed to different things. Going by the registers, we've talked and brainstormed internally. Do we really need a kid to slow down by each register? And you do this since the meals are essentially free, or could we do more of a you're just counting? There's one meal, there's a second one, and keeping track that way. So we're trying to speed up the time that kids are in and out to protect the cafeteria workers, and also to maybe not have it slow down by our typical way we do business in the cafeteria.
Okay.
That's been that's there's been some good conversations there, and the cafeteria managers, we just had a meeting this week, yesterday as a matter of fact, and they're pretty much up to speed. One of the things we are changing is there will be pre-ordering of lunches each day. So when the kids are in and they take the morning attendance, we're going to use the same software, Power School, and we're going to use. We haven't used it in the past, but there's actually a food menu thing in there, and we'll list the 2 or 3 entrees we're going to offer each day, and then they'll just do a quick count. How many are doing the chicken? How many are going to do the pizza? And they'll put a number in there, and then the cafeteria will make about that amount, a little bit more, but they'll have the pre-orders already down there. So it's a way for us to control the cost because people aren't paying now, and the reimbursement we get from the government only partially covers the cost of lunch. And so that's something that's continuing to go in the negative. This will help us to kind of limit that as much as we can. But it'll also get kids in and out of there quicker too, because there won't be as much stuff put out there because they know they only needed, 12 chicken and 42 pizzas or something.
Well, I like that. That's a very good mechanism of doing things. And my last question is, so the CO2 monitoring, I know that's recorded in what format, or is that recorded in a software on an Excel sheet? And any way that we could possibly see an example of that?
Yeah, you give me a minute here. Let's see. I think I got it open somewhere here. So for the CO2, we haven't recorded that yet. The principals have been using it and practicing with it. So for instance, in this school, I know it's smaller on your screen, we record a whole bunch of things, and ultimately it ends up with a calculation here that's air changes per hour. That's this column right here. Whoa, that's right off my screen. But anyways, let me come down. So we'll do things such as the vent area in square feet, and then we use our meter to record the feet per minute that's coming through there. This is a calculation I set up here. This is another calculation I set up, so we don't have to measure those. We measure the length, the width, and the height of the room, and there's all sorts of things. I've worked with the custodians so they understand if there's a bunch of cabinets here, we're not going to the wall behind it, that type of thing. We calculate automatically the volume, and then there's the air changes per hour. From all of this, I'm able to put in what the minimum air velocity needs to be to have at least 4 air changes per hour. And then here's, in this case, they've already measured March, and here's what March looks like for that particular room. And if I just scroll down, you can see what I tell them is you got to be above that red number there. And as we go down here in this building, you can see a lot of them are above that.
From a data standpoint, this is awesome.
Yeah, it is. And let's say that this one here, this 173, let's say that was just 73. What I tell them is, okay, if you run into a room that's 73, it's below what the minimum number has to be here. We have given them some air purifiers. I say for the short term, put those in the room, get them going. leave the doors open, and then check the inside the univent, check the filters to see if they somehow maybe got clogged. Maybe they're doing a science experiment where there's powder or something and everybody's clapping and it got into the air and got sucked in there and blocked it up. Is there some simple thing you can do? If not, we'll be over shortly and we'll take a look at the unit ourselves, and then we'll remeasure it and be off and running. So that's what we have in play right now. And this is the spreadsheet that we've been using. Principals share or talk to their teachers. They might share some of that with them. Some have taken pictures of it and share that with them, screenshot, that type of thing. But this is what we've had in play. We've done work training the custodians so they understand what they're doing. They understand how to use the meter. So it's been pretty good. And the principals are their fallback guy or gal. So if they don't quite understand, like, this number didn't work, or the principal helps them, and then they can always come back to me and I can re-put in the formulas or something. So
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Linda. Yep.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
That is awesome. That's the kind of thing of, talking about some of the putting more kids in the classrooms and needing to find all the desks. As a parent, my anxiety is rising. My kids are going in for the first time ever on April 5th. And so that was just like, whew, that's amazing. That is amazing to have that in black and white, a good scientific method. That's awesome. Thank you.
Sure. And the principals have done a great job working with their custodians, and the legwork was all done by the custodians, the head custodians, and they've done a fantastic job with that. Because you can imagine, this is pretty involved, going in, getting all these measurements, and the first meeting I had with them, and then giving them these meters, and they're like, what the? But they've done a great job, no complaining. They just jumped right on it, and it's been for me. That's one of the things I feel the best about, is how they've really got in behind the scenes and made things work, the custodians.
Good. Yeah, I agree with everyone. That's awesome looking. Is a bit of a data geek, like,
oh, there's tons in there.
I can't wait till you collect all of it and then you can graph it, but that's just for fun. Linda, yeah.
Seriously though, have you considered publishing this? I mean, once we're through, right? Because it made me think of, there's a study at University of Colorado Boulder about trying to put a finer point on this. Okay, you have X number of people in these age ranges. How much do they breathe? And you have that in a data set. You've got the volume of the room. You've got the ventilation. And it for COVID, they were trying to work out, can you anticipate how many positives are going to end up after X number of hours or X number of days? This kind of information, I think, would be a dream to somebody's research project. And I would really encourage, who has the time? I understand that. But no, seriously, that is so much work that you look around at all of the data that's coming out around the world for right now for COVID, and it's not nearly that detailed. It's not nearly that comprehensive. So I really think that if there's an avenue for publication,
well,
I'll write the recommendation, right?
keep our eyes open. I'll tell you this, one of the things we did notice, when you look across all the rooms across the whole district, there's two schools which have bubbled up as, you know what, if we had any money, these would be the priority ones. One is Carolyn's location, ECC. Those have some of the lower readings. They're closer to that 4 air changes per hour. And those are the older units. We don't have any ability to make them go any faster. We've done everything we can to get them pretty much right where they are. And I think Carolyn could tell you, some of them feel like they're shaking apart in there. So I'm not sure that that's survivable. I mean, it's working right now. We're going to get to the end of the year, but that building, and the other one is Thomas Prince. In Thomas Prince, the problem we have there is the way that they're constructed. It's no longer done. And so we have to go out to a fabricator to have him redo how the bearings are set up on these long bars with these squirrel cages. That's what they're called. The fans that are on them. It's a real challenge to get that school if the motor dies, an original motor. So those are the two schools I'd say if we down the road, if you guys are involved in this still, and those are two priority schools I think we have to look at.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, Linda, I mean, had a really good point that, I mean, the information you're collecting is information that is really above and beyond. It's, I mean, just from discussions I've had with people in other towns, other states, you know, that have a spouse that's a teacher or something like that, like, you know, they opened up for hybrid in January. They showed up and there was a pile of filters because no one put in a work order to install them. And like, they just forgot. And I mean, and then we're talking about, you know, pages and pages of data, and, you know, there's room for improvement everywhere, but I mean, hats off to you on this. I mean, you guys have done a good job. Absolutely. So.
Thank you. I'm definitely going to pass that on to everybody that was involved in this. We really put people first, and we wanted to prove to people that it was safe to come in, because that was part of the anxiety we were feeling from people as well. And yep.
Yeah. All right. I do want to wrap up the HVAC discussion and some of it, so we can move on to other more exciting things like you do have items in here under the COVID-19 return, the decision matrix. Was there anything you wanted to touch on that, or just make sure that we were able to see it?
I needed you, because of safety and those types of things. The way we're working with the boards of health, and we're going to touch base with them twice before we reopen. So it's like 2 weeks, 3 weeks before, and then right the week before. And we're going to use that decision matrix, and there's a link right there that goes to it, to make sure that we feel it's safe to reopen. And as everyone knows, we're in a little bit of an uptick right now, so we absolutely want to do that. We've had our first meeting with the local boards of health, the nurses, and our safety team internally to kind of go through that and put numbers in it on where we think we are 2 weeks ago. We're going to meet with them next week, right before we open. And then we'll meet with them in terms of looking at the high school population as well to see, like, does it make sense to reopen the high school at this point? And we'll meet twice with them before we do that. They'll also review to make sure it's still safe to keep us open. After that, we'll meet as needed. If we still see upticks, we'll just call a meeting, and we'll use that tool to assess whether we feel it's safe for us to be open at this time. And we're going to use that one that went in front of school committee, was explained. So I think that's important for you guys to know that we're following that. The updated public information, I just wanted to make sure that you understood that that's been shared with parents over several people's newsletters and surveys and everything. And that's that updated public information. We update that as we get more information. And we are following that published timeline planning document that we went over with you guys at the full school committee around what our steps are to work towards full in-person learning. We've been pretty much right on with that. A couple times we've had to push something off a day or so, but we're pretty much right there.
Good. Any other questions before we move on to the capital plan? I did see Carolyn just said that we should just get a new ECC.
I think that is a worthy goal, I'll just say.
Yes.
Thank you for entering that into the notes.
Yeah. Just, you know what, I mean, while we're out there getting stuff, just grab one of those, like the store. It's true that it's definitely one of the oldest buildings that needs a whole lot of work.
Did Mike have his hand up, I think, maybe?
Yes, I was wondering if you could speak to, I do understand the decision matrix and why it's there, but knowing that we pretty much have to open on April 5th, I'm wondering how that plays into things, because the learning hours don't count.
Mike, that's a great question. What's always been the unless statement by the commissioner is unless local cases rise to this level, unless local conditions make it unsafe. So that's been said all along. So even though maybe what gets put on the news and what's the quick thing is all schools have to open by this date, there is that catch in there. So we feel that's an important thing for us to circle back and look at and make sure that it is really safe, not just because the front end of that statement says all schools must reopen by this date. So that's why we're doing that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
All right. Anything else? So let's move on to the capital plan. I know you did send out the Holden Town and Building assessments document. That's sort of a backup for the stuff that's on the Holden side, because that was something that the select board and town manager went out and had done. It was a couple of years ago now, I think.
2019, they had it done. Yep.
Yeah. And they developed a plan for all the buildings in town, including the schools.
And they are following it, Adam, and that's why I wanted to bring it to this group. It's a lot of pages in there, and the elementary schools show up several sections. It'll go like, because it's alphabetical, it'll go Davisville, Dawson, and it's got some other town rooms. Then it'll circle back a little later to Mayo. There's only 3 of our schools in there. Those are the 3. They didn't have anything from Mount View in there. And then they show up in some of the appendices that are down near the bottom. And I can share where those locations are with people in an email if you'd like, or I'm not sure if it's saying I send it to you, Adam. I'm not sure if I send it to everybody, where the different locations are. They are following that pretty much. We met with, because of the Dawson bathroom situation, we talked about that before. We talked what might our next steps be. Well, an opportunity presented itself. So we met with representatives from the town and brought their attention to that. They brought us back to this planning document and said, oh, look at line whatever, is it there and here? And they didn't collect enough information when that was done. They said that seems to be a problem. And then essentially the notation was we'll have to circle back to that or something along those lines. Once I made the people in town aware of it, they've reached back out to myself and Jim Cavello and are asking us to get them more detailed information so they can look at potential funding sources for that. So that was a good meeting that we had. They are trying to follow through on different aspects in there. So things that are a priority in those first 3 years, they're actually trying to follow through with funding and get those things done. So that's why I think it's an important document for you guys to have and to understand that this is sort of a real document and they're working off of it and putting a lot of effort into it. So if we wanted to chime in and say we felt something else was a priority, like maybe the bathrooms, right? It wasn't on their list, and now that they saw it, they're willing to redo it. Or maybe it's something around building safety, and maybe as part of like, oh, we now believe buildings should have this in place, and we could circle back to them and say, as part of building safety, we would like to see these doors have this new whatever it is, in front of them, or the glass now is this or something. So that's why I wanted to bring your attention. Holden is the only community that has this detailed of a document in place. So I needed to make sure that you understood that they actually are making some progress and we'd want to interact with them at some point. The first one isn't the link. So Dan had shared with me the 10-year capital plan. He said it still needs some work. What I was hoping is what would you like to see presented at the next meeting for that? And what are you hoping to have in there for that? It goes out over multiple years. It was done a few years back. It needs to be reprioritized. Some things I don't think are as high of a priority now. Some things we've done. So I just wanted to get from you, what do you want to see in play? And I can certainly make sure that we have that ready to go. If you wanted to plow through it yourselves at a meeting and reprioritize, we can certainly do that. If you'd rather see us take care of most of that and you just sort of review it and whatever you'd like to see. That's why I wanted to ask you.
So I think what I'd like to, me personally, and I'm not speaking for the group here, you know, I saw some of the previous one that was done when I was in business and finance. It was, and basically it was just laid out, you know, it had the buildings, the projects, and then what years it would fall into in like a dollar value. That was good. If there's more info to that, that would be great. But I mean, at least for the presentation right now, really I guess for the way I understand it is that this plan is for us to just give to the towns for the large projects that we see that they're going to need to address in the out years, you know, over the next 10 years. And it's the things that we see being in the buildings day to day that, you know, okay, this is going great now, but we're going to see this, you know, it's coming up on end of life, or issues with this. We can maybe fix it piecemeal for the next 2 years, but you got to do it in 2 years, things like that. You know, and I don't know if necessarily, you know, committee members who are not in the buildings necessarily have a whole lot of input on what the priority should be, unless there's something glaring. I think it's a good check and balance for us to go like, why is this more important? And I think that's really the benefit, is to take that, present it to us. You know, we represent at least 3 out of the 5 towns. You know, so that we can look at it and go, okay, this makes sense. That makes sense. Oh, this town's suddenly going to have a giant chunk in fiscal year 26. Can we split that up? Or, you know, I know my town's not going to be able to do that. Or I know this town's got such and such bond that's ending this year. Can we move it to a year after that? And I don't know all those details, but you know, that's the kind of thing that, you know, is it level loaded for all the different towns? Is it? So I guess really just present to us what it is and some of the reasoning behind it. That's what I would be looking for. And then as we have comments, questions, which I'm sure we will, I am anticipating it being a pretty long discussion, especially with Linda. But I mean, me too. I mean, there's definitely things in there where I'm sure I'm going to see it on this plan, and it may have been on our old plan and it was supposed to happen a couple years ago, or happened this year. And, you know, nothing happened according to schedule this year. So I guess from my perspective, that's what I'd like to see. And I'd like to open it up for whatever else anybody else would like to see on it. Linda, did you have a hand up? Or?
No, I was trying to be patient, and so please, someone else go before me.
I'll take it. I'd like sort of an overview, because if this is an open-ended question of what do we want to do in the buildings, that's kind of you can run with that pretty far. So what exactly, like, how does the process work? New to this.
What's on this plan are things that we know need work. Like I mentioned, ECC and those univents. That's on the list. It just happens to be that it's 4 years out from right now is when it is on this plan. So there's some known things that have to be replaced. And then there's, as Adam said, a boiler has a life expectancy of X years. Well, why don't we put it on the plan knowing that it's going to reach that point? Let's put it on the plan the year before it reaches that, so that we can start to look at, can we afford to replace it right now, rather than waiting for it to fail and then do it. It's being a little more proactive. So some things are end of life, roofs, boilers, those types of things. Other things are, that thing is dying and we gotta work on that. So
is the NAQUAG roof in there somewhere?
You give me a minute and I'm going to find that out.
I know that's been a talking point in Rutland for some years now. I don't know if anything's been done to it recently.
it's got parts of the roof are on here,
Okay.
not the entire thing.
Yeah, and I mean, just to maybe clarify a little, it's, as I understand it, this plan, it's not a wish list.
No,
It's not like, oh, we'd like to add this, or, you know, it's we have this system and we think it's going to need either preventative maintenance or
Yep.
emergency maintenance around this time.
Okay.
Um,
Thank you.
It's not like it's a nice to have.
It's not budget priorities
Right.
meeting. Okay.
well, one of the things that is missing from this is those priorities of in a single year. If the town only has so much money, what's our priority? So you mentioned Naquag, Mike. There's things there for Central Tree, for Naquag and Glenwood. In a single year, if the town's saying, well, come on, guys, we can't do all this. What's the one or two things you want? So that's where I think it's important for us to reach consensus. The other hole I've seen in this is it's a locally developed plan that kind of gets brought up at a meeting and sits in someone's, hard drive. It's like I think what needs to happen is, what's the next step? We should meet with somebody on the town side and start to give it some more legs on that side. Say, here's what we're seeing. How's this going to work? Can we work with you to try to push this forward, to leverage it, rather than just, oh, that's a wish list. Oh, well, and nothing happens. That's it. That's where we need to go with this, is really to get some things moving.
Is this a plan that's currently in place or one that's going to be starting soon? When you say it's a 10-year plan?
Mike, I think it was created 3 or 4 years ago. I think it was created my second year here. So I'll say it was created 4 years ago. So,
it's an ongoing document that's adjusted as necessary?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And one of the things I think that would speak volumes is if we could look back to the previous year and say, well, that's what we had. What did we really do there? How did we get that done? And for instance, this year, one of the really big things at Central Tree was we have to change over some of the way that the air handlers are controlled, and the whole cost of the project, put it on the town side. But by breaking it down into smaller units, we could say, we'll do the gym and the calf first. We'll do this part next. We'll do, for instance, and then you're spending less money, but you're spending it in multiple increments. But it was a way for us to at least get some things that we're having issues with that weren't running up and running. So, there's a way that maybe we can leverage it with local money that stays under what that magic number is that goes off to the town, or to break a project up into maybe smaller parts so we could still get it done, even though maybe a certain community says this isn't a good year for us. We can't do any of that. It's falling back and saying, all right, what's plan B then? How are we going to get this? And that's where I think this committee would want to weigh in is, well, they said no, the voters voted it down, or the town wouldn't even put it on, for the voters to see. What are we going to do? Because it's still got to get done. It's about student and adult safety, for instance, or something.
So the items in this plan, are those, like, how does it get approved? Are these expenses added there into each fiscal year budget? Are these one-off items? How does it work?
I can speak to Holden, and the way that they've done it is, so the vote on the school budget, for instance, and then at some point on the town floor, there'll be an article that deals with special projects, and they'll list what it is. Maybe it's at the fire station on this street, we need to, upgrade this. At the Mayo School, we need to do this. And it lists several things in there, and people can vote individually, but they generally vote for all these capital projects, and maybe it totals whatever it is. They'll vote for it, and then the money is appropriated towards those projects.
So it's all on the town. It's just like a normal I should say, approving a new fire truck. It's just like that. It's not part of our actual budget.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Yep. But it could be part of ours if it's below that threshold that triggers it. Adam, do you know what that threshold is? I'm not really up on that side too much.
I think it's 35,000. It changed in the last regional agreement.
Yeah, it's right around there. It's a number like that. So
okay.
And I know during the last time we developed the plan, one of the complaints from the towns was there's a lot of, it might have been 30,000 last time. There's a lot of $30,000 projects here. $31,000 projects. Like they're all right at that level. I'm like, are you sure that's the right thing? Where are you getting these numbers? What if it's 29? Do I give you the bill? You know, so I think we're in a better position with most of the towns. I mean, at least communication wise.
I agree.
Bidirectional communication. We can say now, like, well, this is where we got the information. These are the quotes we got. We can help you come up with more quotes. So I think we're in a better spot to have those discussions, and then we can adjust it as like, oh no, this is something we decide we'll take on and put in that year's budget, and then the town can decide whether they take it on.
And Adam, I'm glad you're mentioning that. That's a really important role for a group like this to have, is to say, Bob, you listed $100,000 for that. Where's that coming from? So you guys, it's sort of that internal check. And if you don't feel comfortable no, go back and get some different quotes. What it should happen is I should be able to say, here's so-and-so that's on the state approved vendor list, and they told us it would be around this much money and they could get it done in this time frame, that type of thing. So you understand that there's something of substance behind it. The last thing I just wanted to mention is the high school and ECC are district-owned buildings, so we have to foot the bill for anything that happens there. It doesn't matter the cost. So those aren't things you go to the town. Sometimes you might go for a multi-town use of funds that we have, like E&D, or to approve short-term borrowing so we could get something done, like a track replacement or a turf field or something like that, or a roof on the high school if we had to do that. That's a big ticket thing. We wouldn't probably have the resources in any single year to get that done. So you do short-term borrowing to get it done and then pay it back over multiple years.
Now, those two specific buildings are shared, their purposes or uses are shared amongst all 5 towns. Is that the reason that the district's responsible for them? That's how I would understand it.
Yep.
Okay.
Good way to put it.
Thank you.
Linda has her hand up.
I missed the little hand in the
We're
corner.
making her wait.
It's
She
good
will
for me,
learn
right?
patience. No, it's fine.
No, actually, with that, it just as a kind of an aside, there are the district programs housed in the other buildings in the towns that are not, but just, a smaller percentage within those buildings, I guess, is the rationale, I would assume. But my question was about the repairs that were done for this year.
Yeah.
Have they already been taken down from this capital plan, or no, it didn't touch what was going on in there? Because I mean, the HVAC was pretty substantial, and I'm thinking of like, wasn't it Paxton that had another substantial repair that they were using some of their state some of their funds to pay for?
CARES Act money. Yes, I'm glad.
Yeah, the CARES Act. Yeah.
That was that. They stepped up and helped us out a lot with that. So in this plan, and that's why I feel there needs to be input from you guys as well. In this plan was nothing about repairing the heating system in that building, or the lines. There were multiple leaks in those lines, or the compressor that's used to make sure that the thermostats can work. And that's all what had to be repaired in that building to get the heat to work there. So that was the big problem we were having down there. It wasn't necessarily the univents. It was, well, we got to get these heaters to, the heat to work. So I think this plan was developed several years ago. I'm not sure how many people had input into it and who did. And that's why maybe like a strategic plan, you've got to get input from people that are vested in this. Like, who's your stakeholders? Like, they got to be on something that chimes in here and says, absolutely, that's that frozen wall in my building that happens, every winter when it's 15 degrees outside. Yep, let's get it on the list. That's got to get looked at. Is there something, there's a void or something, or is air coming in some way? Like, we have to have those things looked at. And that's why you got to get some input from stakeholders as well, as opposed to just saying, for instance, to Dan Deedy as the business manager, come up with a 10-year plan and we'll look at it and approve it. That's the other end, is if there's more people invested in it, they want to see it move forward. Therefore, when we go to the towns, maybe they want to come with us to defend why they need this done. And, that's how you gain momentum on these things and actually get them to happen over time.
Like,
May I make a suggestion for an item?
Sure.
I would very much like to encourage the district to get off of pneumatics completely in all buildings. It's
Yes.
just a money pit. It's a money pit. You're gonna spend more in repairs than you are.
Oh,
And just
you
fixing it.
you and I are on the same page on that. I've been. What are we doing here? But
I remember hearing about that years ago. I'm like, there's pneumatics in Paxton? You got to be kidding me.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we need alarms in every building. We need to have doors that lock automatically in every building. We got to have key, the
Access
a lot of
control.
things. Yeah.
Access control systems in every building would be good. I don't know. That's a big expense, but
It is, but it's where we are this day and age.
Mhm.
I forgot to lock the door on that side of the building, and suddenly someone's in the building. You got to have something that it just, yeah. Adam, you moving us on there, buddy?
yeah, well, Mike, did you just raise your hand again, or is that just left there?
that was accidental. Thanks.
Okay. All right. I think the only other thing, and I don't think we need it for next time we meet, but also for a 10-year plan, we really should lay out some of not everything, but some of the major things that we as a district are going to take on that are below that threshold, so that towns can see that and be like, oh, this is what they are planning within their budget. And they're not just increasing it and sending it on to us. They've got ones that are 25,000, 28,000, 30,000 that they're going to build into their budget and tackle as well. And that's kind of, given the good news with the bad, like, hey, here's this giant ticket item you got to do, but we are taking on this stuff as well to upkeep what are essentially their buildings that we use for $1 a year.
And Adam, that's a great point. And it's also important, I think, for people to realize there's existing money in the budget. So even if we had a 0% increase, let's say, and we just brought every line item forward and didn't increase them, there's money built in to do projects. The funding might be on Thomas Prince one year, or it might be on NAQUAG the next year, but there is money in there. And then that allows us to still make progress. Even if it's a really tight year, there's still money that's in there. So that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. All right. Anything else on the capital plan? When we get to discussing the next meeting, I do want to have that in the next few weeks. So hopefully we can discuss that at the next meeting.
Kristen's got her hand up, or a question. Do you want me, when we do the first draft of the agenda, to move this up so that would be the entry point at the next meeting? Okay.
Yeah.
I just have to, I have to go to class. So I have to leave. I'm so sorry. See you guys later. Thank you.
Okay. Have fun in class.
I
won't be as
will.
fun as we are.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right. So I guess moving on from the capital plan, try to hit the budget update. You have the 2 grants listed.
Yep. We've been told we're getting money from the FEMA grant. This is the first one Dan put in. They have not acknowledged when that money will show up. So Dan's still chasing that down. So that's a quick update on that front. The other grant, I'm hoping to have that submitted on Monday. We're in the process of deciding the final things that are going to be in there. There's going to be $150,000 in that grant that will go towards reimbursing the district for costs for things they've already spent money on, that are related strictly to increasing the air quality in classrooms. So that's a good thing there. It's sort of nickel and diming a whole bunch of other things. I think there's 16 different things that I've been able to fit in there, including partially offsetting the cost of the monitors for the cafeteria. So there's a lot of different things we're trying to do with that. That's the grant where about half of it goes to the towns to try to lower their assessments, can be applied in that direction. The other half sits with us and we're able to do things. It's a $617,000 grant. So about half of that is what we get, maybe a little more than half. I don't have all the numbers right here in front of me, but that's roughly where it's at.
Okay.
Yep. So I just wanted you guys to be aware, especially around that, we are trying to find funding sources for some of these facilities repairs that have done.
Question, Linda?
Just a quick question. On the agenda, it says ESSA too, but it's ESSER, right?
Yes, ER.
ER.
Yes.
ER. Okay, just wanted to make sure for the minutes.
We're going to change that right now. There we go. Thank you. Yep.
All right. Any other questions on grants, other budget related? No. All right. So the next item is policies. I'm going to be honest, I did not look at these before the meeting. I don't know if anybody else did and has some input on any. Okay. So unless anybody objects, I'm going to just pass over those two and actually try to focus the next meeting. It will be right around the time of opening, so I'm sure that'll be a topic of discussion, but
sure,
we'll also be in the middle of it and we won't be able to change much of it. So I'd like to focus the next meeting on long-term plan and some policies, so we can at least get some policy done before we.
If I could just let you know what I did for you guys to try to help you out maybe a little bit here. There's our policies up there, and a little lower on the agenda is something called resources. I looked in the Massachusetts Association of School Committee, their website, and tried to find some model policies that maybe are kind of like this. Unfortunately, we don't follow their way of naming policies or their labeling conventions. Some of our policies have come from other states, not from Massachusetts. It might not follow Massachusetts practices or our laws and regulations. So that's why it's good to at least have the MASC model policies, because you might be able to see like, wow, we're supposed to ask about that, or gee, that's all they say we can do, versus our own local policy says we should be doing this, this, and this. So it kind of does help a little bit to have those as guiding. Those are the closest ones I could find to the policies you had listed there, Adam. So,
okay. All right, thanks. And I'll definitely make a point to go through those by next time, and at least maybe make some notes on paper or something like that to give us a starting point.
sure.
Look at it.
And I'm happy to, on the district side, have us go through it and we could give you some recommendations. Or if you'd rather have it be more organic and have you guys figure that out, I'm happy just to step back and let that happen. So either way.
I mean, you're not doing much between now and April 5th. So.
Well, I'm so happy to do that. I'm happy to do that, because sometimes you're like, what the heck is this about? And versus someone who's in education every day, we're like, well, no, this is why we need that language for this. So
yeah, no, that's fine. I'll definitely work with you as we come up towards the next meeting.
perfect.
That sounds good. So the next item is new business. I know, Linda, you had said you wanted to bring something up in new business, and I forget what it is, so go for it.
Yeah, so I was looking at the Sterling change of date for the elections, and it will now be June 21st. And so right now our last day is June 18th, and I would hope that really is our last day. But in case some unforeseen thing happens, we could end up having students and teachers, everybody in the building while there's also an election going on. And normally, I know a lot of Sterling parents have had issues with that in the past. I think that with COVID, that seems like it could be opening Pandora's box of issues. So just to have that on the radar of what we might want to do if we do have to go towards June 21st, and what Sterling schools will need to do. But also in the fall, while I certainly hope that we have a return to school, like we would expect in the fall, just something to keep in mind is that we might have to make adjustments to how we do polling locations that are in the school, thinking about contact tracing, if we still need to be worrying about that. I was thinking it through of, well, there'll be the voter logs of who's been and who's checked off. I don't know if we actually would have access to that if we need to do some kind of contact tracing. And then if there are any people who go in, attempt to vote and are turned away, well, we wouldn't have their name. So just whatever processes are around that, just so that we're not caught off guard.
We will definitely reach out to Sterling and talk to them. Linda, this is the town meeting or is it the election?
The election.
Okay.
So the town meeting is June 14th.
Yep.
And the elections are June 21st.
Okay.
So go on.
We'll definitely reach out to them and talk that through with them. And in terms of the maybe how can we make keep our students safe, but also protect people that might be voting from our students, because it could go either way. Like people go like, I don't want to go vote in a school and catch COVID or something.
Right, because kids won't be vaccinated by then, right?
So we'll bring that up at when we meet with the town administrators and start to talk that through. This could be one of those years where, like, look, guys, we got to both sides got to protect each other. You got to find another location or something, or another day or whatever it is. So, yep.
Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Carolyn, you raised your hand. You're so quiet. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm having some technical issues, so I'm having a bit of a night. But so I also attend the diversity meeting, and so Linda, correct me if I'm wrong. So they sometimes do like requests to extend the meeting.
That was odd. I have to be honest.
Is that necessary? Because I was like, oh, it's 8:30. Do we need to request to continue?
I didn't ever see that done in a subcommittee meeting before. I
Okay.
think it might have been a pointed point of information or point of order. I think it was.
Perfect. So let's just continue the fun.
Oh, that's a new one. I haven't heard that. I mean, I could see it if we hit 10 o'clock, but
No, we did it at 8:30. We did it at 9 to 9:30 as well. Yeah.
huh.
And I was thinking of our marathon meetings. Like,
Yeah, that's
There's more of a formality, it seems like, for a subcommittee meeting.
Yeah, I would
I
think.
think there was a point being made.
Oh, understood.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
understandable, but
All right. Any other items of new business? Something we want to bring up next time? Anything to add to the agenda next time?
I do have one more. So just with more students in and talking about safety, just in terms of Alice training, how that's going. I've said many times that I mean, I don't know if there's a better one out there, and so maybe I shouldn't rock the boat. But I am kind of skeptical of the Alice approach. I am skeptical of any for-profit organization dipping their toe into public education or nonprofits, or it just puts my little antennas up of maybe this needs to be investigated thoroughly, but perhaps it already has, right? So just to talk about what we're doing in terms of that kind of safety, and what kinds of incidents might be going on that our school resource officer needs to be brought into, or those kinds of events, just to have a kind of a pulse on what's going on, I think would be helpful for what our purview is. I don't know if that idea is shared, but
Linda, what would you like to see? Would you like to have us talk to you about what our plans might be moving forward? Do you just want to know like where are we at now and have me comment on it? Because it's funny you asked that because this was a unique week from where I sit because we kind of had to put a little bit of that in play. So
well, so that's right. I had yeah. So um, since I'm in Sterling, I don't get all of the town's news. But yeah, just an update on how it's working, given that COVID has upended so much already. I'm sure it's upended this. What's just kind of like a status report is more of what I'm thinking about.
sure.
That of the training, where we are in the training, where we are on it needing to use any of the training.
Yep.
Those kinds of things would be helpful. And I don't know if that is necessary for executive session or not. I don't think it is, but I leave that to your discretion.
No, I can give you a general update. We are where we left off before COVID got in there. So we were doing trainings. We're at a certain point. Some schools had trained staff and were, excuse me, beginning to train students and those types of things. That's where we're at. The protocols that we have put in place already are still there. And that was this week. It just happened that in one of our schools, somebody was doing target practice with a real gun, and you can't tell how far away a gun is, when you start to hear it. So we sheltered in place. The police came out. They investigated. They found out what it was. We were released from the shelter in place. It wasn't a lockdown because at that time there was nobody that was cited, and there was construction going on. So as far as we know, someone could have been doing where you have the nail gun that shoots into the cement, and it could have been that going on for all we knew. So, but we felt it was in conjunction with the police, safe to shelter in place. Parents were notified immediately. Parents were notified after the fact what was discovered. So a lot of those protocols we put in place, that made me proud that they just surfaced and people just jumped right into it. So that in terms of long-term planning, we had begun just the other day as a result of that to talk about, do we need to resurface this? Some schools are moving away from the lockstep Alice model to a more relaxed approach to this. And we haven't quite made any decisions about where we might go next. That's absolutely something that we could discuss with this group as to maybe we might go this way or this way, get some input from you guys, as well to make a better, more informed decision on our end.
Bob, is it possible either the next meeting or the one after that?
Yeah.
Just give an update because we have 2 new members that weren't on
Sure.
the
Yep.
back when we were talking about Alice instead of COVID. Just to give an update on what we've done so far, where we are, and then, up until people stopped going to school, what was the path forward then? And
Yeah.
I think that'd be good. And it doesn't have to be long, just,
Sure.
I mean, if there's something that requires a little more discussion, maybe you can just send it out
Yep.
as an attachment beforehand, and then we can just discuss the status. That'd be great.
Absolutely. Not a problem.
Okay.
And I did have another like a request on that side too, besides the Alice, but also just if there are any safety, safety related events in the schools where like the SRO is involved, or just to make sure that we know where we are. Just like you were saying, within the cafeteria, you've got more kids in, more people in, and some things can pop up. And so just to kind of have an eye on how we're doing in that regard, just what's happening, how much we need to use this, this resource, how it's going, and what kind of resolution happened. I don't know how detailed that needs to be, but just to get, really just get a pulse.
trends and patterns we can absolutely share with you. Details about individual cases we absolutely cannot share with you. So that's where we can go. I would be happy to go through with you guys and show you how you can access discipline information that's reported by Department of Education. It's on the public side. And we could talk about maybe, well, what's with this? Well, what happened there? We could talk about maybe trends and patterns or something, or are we seeing this year being comparable to where we were, in that other year or something like that? So we could certainly talk about those types of things.
Good. All right, Mike, and then I'll go to Carolyn. Oh, all right, just Mike.
Okay. Yeah, so I'd really like, especially being a new member, and I don't know much about how the district handles emergencies and whatnot. I'd love an overview of what's currently in place for training for, I'll call it violent events, or for different kinds of emergencies, specifically in this case regarding security of people, and what's in place at schools as far as security systems, what's existing. If Bob, if we wanted to set up a meeting, just you and me to go over it, if that'd be easier, I'd be
Sure.
open to that. I know it's a bit of a sensitive subject in some ways.
It is and it isn't. I mean, if we were going to be talking, if you guys had questions about where do we evacuate at a different school, and we're going to share that, that's something we do in an executive session, because that's not what we'd want the public to see, because you could be potentially informing someone who might be assaulting the kids as to, oh, that's where they go. All right. So we do that in executive session type of thing. I'm happy to explain. We've taken the first step, which is Alice, which is a way to sort of respond if somebody's in there. The other side of that is, okay, so you've got fire, police, you've got state police, you've got district people. What role does everybody have, and how do you all work together? That's the side where we still need to make some progress, and maybe that's where this group would lend some sort of, we want to see you guys get this type of training, report back on how that's going here, because that's equally as important is who owns the incident. What does that mean when they say they're on the A side? Like, where's that? And we have to be able to sort of speak the same language to understand our roles in that. Fox News helicopters circling, or somebody here wants an interview, and who's going to speak to them, and who's informed, and who's going to be at the incident itself, working with the command crew there from the school to represent like what our interests are, or our information, our phone numbers if we got to do something. Something's burning down there. Is that where the chemicals are stored? All those types of things. So that's where I think this group could have a very informed discussion of, okay, we want to see more. We want to see this happen. When's that training going to happen? Those types of things.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Bob, that just raises a question for me. Do we have, like, I'm sure the police and fire have training on this, but do we have anyone in the district that gets like incident command structure training, like through FEMA or anything like that?
We've just scratched the surface of that. So we've had one of the things that I brought here from another district, and I saw the value of it when I came from Hawkinton to here, was to have actually events where you bring all the players in there, but it's just a tabletop. It's fake, but it's 9:03. You just got a call, main office, high school. What are you going to do now? And then they have to react. All right, police, the high school just called you and said they're not sure what's up, but there's gunshot. And so everybody's in the same room. We work together. If you can throw curve wrenches in there, like a little curve in there, and say like, Daryl McCall, you just got taken down. You're no longer in the thing. And so he can't answer anymore as part of the solutions. Well, that means you got to know who's going to step up, who's going to do this. Somebody just here's the Fox News, and they just showed up with all these cameras, and they crossed over the line the police are trying to set up, and who's controlling that? Who's doing what? So we've done 2 of those so far, and we've had some pretty good results, but we need to kind of circle back to that, and folks internally need to finish the incident command training, because we haven't gotten to the point where we've identified roles that everybody's going to have and who's the backup. So let's say that they say, Bob, you're going to be the one that's going to go to the incident and you'll be on site. Well, what if I'm out that day, or what if I'm taken down, or I'm out, and who's going to then be my replacement? And that's the kind of important stuff we need to kind of work through. It's not the time to do it when it's happening in front of you, because everybody is just, when you get that emotion going, you're not in the thinking and reasoning. You got to be able to have the practice so you just react and you know who's doing what.
Yeah, and I know, I mean, just from things that I've done, I know that there's online training available just on what the incident command structure is and the national incident.
Yep.
Something, I don't even remember what NIMS.
Yep.
Just so people have a general understanding of when there is an incident, someone comes in and they start using these words that may be different. They're like, oh, I remember that. That means this. This is what I'm talking about when I'm, I need why they're gonna do. I mean, that's for much bigger incidents, but it's every incident's an incident, and you don't need all the forms and this and that, but you can have all that pre-filled out for a lot of things. And when they're talking about what resources do we need, this and that, and I know in cases we're pulling in DPW and
sure
that, so it might be good just for several people to just kind of throw that into their personal development. Like, yeah, go take this 2-hour online training and just learn the terminology. It's a good idea.
And Adam, I've seen it work both ways. Prior to me going into Hopkinton, I was out in Quabbin, and we had an incident there, and so after the fact, we figured we needed the training. We tried it out there, where it was, you should watch this video and do this. That didn't happen. In Hopkinton, it was, on this day, you're reporting here and you will be trained on this. Much better traction doing it that way. So that's where maybe this group would say, we want this to happen, and report back to us on how it went. That would kind of force maybe the issue to happen, that type of thing. That's within your purview, is to try to, that's what you'd like to see put into play. You're not going to tell us how to do it or when to do it. You're just going to say, this is what we'd like to see happen, as a district. This is what we deem as important as a school committee member. And so.
Yep. Good. Linda, I see you've got your hand.
Of course I do. I actually, so this discussion, though, I think I did a really, really, really quick skim of those sample policies, but I feel like that this all will be a really good topic to go over the policy, to look at these updates of what's happening on the ground here. But I recalled something that I actually had meant to bring up during the capital plan, and maybe this is better off as new business or some other thing, but at the ECC Simcoe last month, they brought up the trouble with the PA system.
Mm-hmm.
So I just saw Carolyn looking over. But that, if things are going on, it would take Andrea coming out to go out to the playground, because they wouldn't be able to hear her announce. And, if there's a bear coming and she needs to announce, you don't want to go out to the bear. You want to bring everybody in. So, or whatever the incident. So is there something that can be done to get that looked at sooner rather than later? Is there room? Is there?
We can certainly look at it. We can certainly work towards addressing it. We've been working maybe on more foundational things, like, we got to get the kids in. Is there enough air in the room? We got to get the kids in. Are we able to sanitize correctly? We got to get the kids in. Are we cleaning the rugs appropriately? So we've taken steps. We still need to take more steps. In no way am I trying to say at any point tonight that we're there. We've just taken some steps to get to a better place, but we're not done. We're absolutely not done. So yes, we can take a look at that.
Yeah, I was just thinking, the high school was looked at last month or so, and just, it's another district building. It's another safety issue. See if there's anything that can help out the little guys.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
thank you.
Yep.
All right. Anything else before we kind of wrap up? No? All right. Next meeting. Let me pull up the calendar. So I feel like this meeting, I wanted to have a week or two ago. I think schedules didn't work out with budget and regular school committee meetings and everything like that. So I would like to have another meeting within the next 2 weeks, if that's possible, unless someone's super opposed to it. I don't know if there's any days. I'm not as. So let's target 2 weeks, the week of the 5th. I'm sure you don't want it on the 5th, probably not the 6th. I don't actually have my school committee calendar in front of me, but I get every other one. But maybe the 7th or 8th, do either of those days work or not work for anybody?
I have a conflict on the 7th. But in the 8th, I think the 8th is the public
that's
hearing
right.
for the regional agreement.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Forgot about that.
So I don't know where that leaves us. I know that the 6th it's a busy time, but if we want to get it in within 2 weeks.
I believe I can. I believe I can do the 6th. I don't know if there's any other. I don't know what administration and teachers will be doing on the 6th. You guys are good?
We can make it work on the 6th. The 5th, that's that's going to be a hectic day, and I'm not sure what you get from any of us that night. You know, it could be like, yeah, okay, that, so yeah.
Okay. So let's pencil in the 6th.
Okay.
Do people prefer 6, 6:30, 7?
7 would be best on my behalf, but I can't speak for everyone else.
It doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter to me. 6 is a little tight for me.
7 would work better for me, but I'm just a WRA representative.
All right, so let's shoot for 7, and we'll go there. So the 7 at 7 o'clock on the 6th. I'll email Randy.
And I'll circle back to her tomorrow. Yep.
Okay. And then expect something to come out from her confirming that. So
yep.
But we'll pencil that in for now.
Adam, I'll create a rough agenda. You and I can either talk on the phone while we look at the doc, or we could meet through Google to sort of finalize the agenda and all that, and then we can get it out to everybody.
Yep. Yeah, that sounds good. And I'll take it as a task to make edits to the document we discussed at the beginning of the meeting on kind of roles. We'll try to bring that up. I'll really actually try to look at policies this time, because I would like to focus the meeting on some of the, unless there's something drastic that comes up on opening day.
Yep.
We've already hit it, and we probably don't need to talk a ton about it, except to just get a general report.
Yep.
So I'd like to focus on some of the administrative stuff that we should be doing.
Sure.
All right. Any last comments, complaints? I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. So seeing no conversation, or I don't even remember if you're allowed to have conversation, but put it to a vote. Linda.
Yeah.
Mike.
Yes.
And I vote yes. And I have 8:50. We adjourned.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Nice job.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. That was a full meeting, so thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Take care.
And seriously,
Bob,
Bob, you should think about publishing. You should really think about publishing that data. I'm not joking.
Bob
That is
says, I'm
amazing.
thinking about retiring.